Hey, what's up, everybody? Today, in this episode, we're going to talk about some of the greatest hacks I've learned in reaching the seven-figure mark in business, aka millionaire status. I'm also going to share the three things, very powerful things, all billionaires that I've connected with do that most business owners don't, and how that can help you get a complete different view of business in the future. Real quick, before I dive into this episode, I do want to share, it's been exactly 7 months since the release of my latest book, 7 Rules of Seven Figures. This is the entrepreneur's playbook to freedom, family, and fortune. And I truly believe this is my most important work to date. I've really simplified everything I've learned about business and building a successful life in business into 7 rules. And I added an execution plan to each chapter so it's more like a playbook. And I'm super excited to share with you first, out of everybody, all of our audience, I want to share with you first. The audio version is now available. So you can download it today at 7 Rules Audio. You can check it out on audible.com. You can listen to it on the go while you're working out in your car. I've also spiced it up. I read the Audible myself and I added some new content. So there's a lot of stuff that you've never heard before if you've actually already read the book. So 7rulesaudio.com. Thank you again for your love and support. And I can't wait until you experience the audiobook. So what I thought I'd do is share some of the lessons, the main lessons and the rules that I've learned going from dead broke to 6 figures in 6 months, and then from 6 figures to 7 figures in terms of business, in terms of strategy, investing, and marketing. So that's kind of the focus of today. And I'm super excited to share this information with you. So I wanted to give you a simple framework and help you with some clarity on how to reach the 7-figure mark and bridge the gap. Because when I grew up in a small town of 6,000 people, thinking about getting the 6 figures, I couldn't even get there in my mind. But slowly, as you uncover certain strategies, as you elevate who you're around, you start to see a clear path. It took me a while to see a clear path to 7 figures. I want to bridge that gap for you. So I'm going to go through some of the rules, give you some context around why I felt like this was needed and why I wanted to write about it, and what else to expect when reading or listening to the audiobook or to the physical book. In other words, some of the biggest shifts I've made that have made the biggest difference in my life and my business and my wealth. So first, one of the first rules is world-class self-awareness. And what people don't know about themselves controls their life. How people talk to themselves controls their life. And what I thought was some of my biggest strengths ended up being some of my weaknesses that almost caused me to quit entrepreneurship. For example, one of my strengths was I thought I could outwork everybody, but I ended up working too much and I was burnout. I was drained. I wasn't thinking clearly. And when I was working 50, 60 hours a week, I made the mistake of asking society, what am I doing wrong? I'm in this business. I'm working a ton. And the answer everybody gave me at the time was work more hours. That's all I knew. So I worked more. I got up to 85 hours a week and I still wasn't seeing results. So I thought my strength was hard work. It ended up backfiring. I literally was like, almost had exhaustion, right? Second thing is I thought my strength was connecting with people and my strength was investing in myself. So I would connect with people. I would get excited to talk to people. I would reach out. I would study. I would read. I would learn, but I had nothing to show for it. And I actually was overwhelmed. And when you're overwhelmed, you seek distractions. So once I took a step back and realized I needed to actually think things through, there's a time for thinking and a time for execution. So this is why I've spent the past couple of years putting myself at the top of my priority list, getting to know myself inside and out so I could better understand my decision-making process. And you're not going to get to 7 figures doing more of what got you 6 figures. It's a different way of thinking. You have to recreate and reinvent yourself. It's a different identity. And you have to be selfish in a sense and put yourself first and think about who you are, who you're not, and what you need to create and who you need to become to get to that next level. In fact, one of the breakthroughs that I share in the book was, this was, I believe, 4 or 5 years ago. I read the least number of books I've read in like 10 years prior. I attended 0 seminars. I only listened to 1 podcast religiously. I had 1 mentor that I paid highly, and I invested in 1 proven program, as opposed to the years before I invested in 3, 4, or 5, right? I was overwhelmed. On the surface, it might seem like I took a step back and I wasn't gaining as much knowledge and I wasn't learning as much, but that's not the case. You see, I simply shifted my attention internally and relied on who I was, what I already knew, as well as my network. And what happened was I had the greatest year I ever had in terms of success, in terms of income, in terms of team building, in terms of happiness, in terms of growth, in terms of everything. So I consumed the least and I grew the most. So it's not about information. If information was all we needed, we'd all be billionaires. It's about the right information, and then it's about executing the right information that's most relevant to your goals, your vision, and who you really are. So I really dive in. I give all the questions I ask myself in the actual book, because gaining clarity is something that's an until activity, which means if you don't have clarity on what's next, you have to continue figuring out exactly what you want and what the clarity is before you move forward. See, a lot of people say, man, I'm not clear. I'll just go back to what I'm doing. I'm not clear on exactly what I want to do and why. Well, it's okay. I'll just settle and figure something else out. No. Clarity is an until activity. So I took 8 months to figure out who I was. I read a ton of books. I hired mentors, and I listened to that one podcast, and I was trying to figure it out. And I simplified that 8 months into a series of questions that made the biggest impact on my clarity. I include those in the actual book in that chapter. The next rule is world-class circle of genius. You can't escape your association no matter how hard you try. And here's where this came from. When I was coming up and I was reaching that 6-figure mark, but I could not get to the 7-figure mark, I tried to figure everything out myself. And that figure it out myself mentality is what caused me to almost quit entrepreneurship and never attain the next level in results, income, and success. And I had built a relationship with somebody prior that I consider my network. He was one of my growth friends. I made a list of my 5 maintenance friends at the time and 5 growth friends at the time. And I just lowered the time I spent with my maintenance friends. People that let you off the hook, people that validate mediocrity, people that don't hold you to high standards, because at the end of the day, you're either hanging with people that hold you accountable or let you off the hook. And your circle of influence will make or break you. So I just lowered the time I spent with my maintenance friends, and I increased the time I spent with my growth friends. So there was a business problem I was trying to solve. Could not solve it. I was banging my head against the wall. I was stressed out. I was frustrated. I was reading, investing, and I was just trying to figure it out. This is before I understood mastery, and I was so overloaded. I'd read every book. I'd watch free YouTube videos, and I couldn't figure it out. So I was on the phone with my mentor, and I decided to ask him. I said, hey, I'm having this huge issue with our marketing. I can't figure it out. Probably 3 minutes goes by. He shares his take. He's been through it. He shared his take and his strategy. That was the answer. I executed that. My business exploded. So at that point, I realized when you have the right network, you don't need to figure anything out yourself. Your network does. So you don't need to figure everything out. Your network has the answer. So I give a complete guide, a specific step-by-step roadmap on how to craft your $1 million and $1 billion network. I give the exact scripts I use. I give the wrong way to network. I talk about how to follow up with people, how to actually reach out, where to reach out. And I use specific examples from people that I interviewed and that I connected with, like Ryan Serhant's one of them, which I believe he's the #1 realtor in all of New York City, and a couple other things. So that's a chapter that can create some pretty big breakthroughs in your networking. I literally give the exact scripts I use that I've used personally to reach out to Tony Robbins, Elon Musk, Tim Ferriss, David Goggins, Robert Kiyosaki, Grant Cardone, Gary Vaynerchuk, Eric Thomas, Ryan Garcia, Master P, all kinds of crazy celebrities that we got a hold of, Matthew McConaughey, and the script works. So you can get that script in the book. The next rule, and I wanted to share just a couple rules that I feel are relevant that I think would get you excited to check out the audiobook. That's kind of the purpose, is to give value and show you guys that the next step to go more in depth is the actual book, whether you like reading it or like listening to it. This was one of the things that was a breakthrough for me because of my past limitations and my programming. Being from a small town and being from a frugal family that was not wealthy, that was dead broke when I moved up from California. I was born in Oakland, California. When I was 6.5, 7, we moved up to the Oregon coast. My parents had nothing, right? And my mom's mom is still kind of a hoarder to this day because she grew up around the Great Depression. So I talk about world-class financial freedom and wealth habits. Financial freedom and wealth was not something that I ever talked about. It wasn't something I thought I was going to accomplish. It was something that was taboo. And from a small town where I didn't know anybody wealthy, to go from that to actually not just me becoming a millionaire, but earning millions per year. And wealthy people do three things. They stop trading time for money, they make their money work for them, and they add more value than everybody else. And there was a time in my life where I was obsessively studying and learning about wealth. And there was a moment where I started to get addicted and more excited about investing versus spending, more excited about producing versus consuming, and more excited about saving than just splurging. And it changed my entire life because wealth is what you don't see. Controlling your time is the highest dividend money pays. And I see the entire purpose of money now is to create a life on your terms so you can have freedom. Now, I dive into the biggest money tactics and why most people go broke. I share exactly the framework I use to crush my limitations and reach that 7 and 8 figure mark. And I realized that money is an excellent servant, but a terrible master. So money's an excellent servant, but a terrible master. And money without financial intelligence is money soon gone. I use this example of the depletion of wealth through athletes. According to Sports Illustrated, 78% of athletes either go bankrupt, or they're under financial stress within 2 years of retirement. And 60% of NBA players go broke within 5 years. The average NBA player makes $30 million, not counting endorsements. Needless to say, making money at a young age or being paid for a talent rather than a learned skill can be a dangerous game. And it often leads to blind, impulsive spending without considering the actual consequences. And why most go broke, I dive into it. They assume age determines value. People are prioritizing certificates over mentality and skills, and they're not valuing and respecting money. So I share the exact 4 things successful entrepreneurs spend money on in order and give examples of each. And it's something that took me 10 plus years to figure out, to uncover, to learn based on hundreds of interviews with millionaires. But these 4 things can change your entire life, right? And in my experience and my observation, it's hard to create income and economic value and build wealth if you don't understand, appreciate, and respect money. Money is not emotional. Money is not good or bad. Rich people aren't greedy. Greedy people are greedy, right? Money just magnifies more of who you are. So figuring out where the limitations come from was something I had to work on internally. Next is a chapter called The 6 Proven and Powerfully Effective Profit and Productivity Maximizers. You can actually accomplish more by doing less. All billionaires I've studied are very calm and they only focus on 1 or 2 things. They limit where their attention is and they're always in their own world. So I'll share a couple of my favorites. One is limit your access. Start teaching people how to communicate with you and start limiting your availability. Millionaires understand that their time is a privilege. Even if you're not at the 6-figure mark yet, you must utilize a strategy for the sake of productivity and focus your energy and attention on one thing. Scattered focus creates mediocrity. Focus on one thing. You try to catch 2 rabbits, you catch none, right? So I haven't answered my phone for a random ring for years, right? It's on silent at all times because you either control your phone or your phone controls you. And as a result, I'm able to accomplish more in a focused, uninterrupted hour than most can accomplish in 4 hours. And take it from me, the more you protect your time, the more valuable it becomes. And I share some examples and some actual tactics. And then there's another thing that I talked about where it's a growth versus maintenance mentality in your business. So everything that is a maintenance activity should be delegated and properly strategically handed off to somebody else. You should only be focused on your growth activities not maintenance activities. Now, everybody that focuses on maintenance activities usually resents what they do, and they became an entrepreneur to develop more freedom, but now they're a slave to their business. That's why it's important to focus on growth mentality and understand what your unique ability is and hire people that complement your weaknesses. And lastly, it's called the back on track ritual. Something that was a big game changer for me was understanding how to get back on track when you're off, when you're out of the zone. When you're not in the zone, when you're frustrated, when you don't feel like working hard, you don't feel like executing your mission and your vision. How do you get back on track? I share some of the best strategies I've learned on how to do that as well. And then there's a chapter, world-class legacy, how to reach sustained greatness. I went on a studying spree for a whole year studying the world's most elite performers, and I tried to figure out how they stayed consistent, how they systemized their growth, how they were able to reach greatness year after year. And that was a pretty eye-opening chapter. And then I end with a productivity master plan. I gave a speech in Dubai years ago, and I've given speeches all different kinds of places. I'm very blessed and humbled to be able to speak in Costa Rica and Tokyo and Dubai and Playa del Carmen and Greece and all these places. But I started sharing my one-page master plan where how do I simplify everything in my head on one page so you have clarity. And I started getting people after the speeches saying, hey, that one page changed my entire life. That was one of the best things I've learned to help me simplify. So I actually took everything out of my head because I never actually wrote it down. It's in me because I use it. And I put that in one of the final chapters to help you simplify everything you've learned into a one-page plan. So there's a lot of other breakthroughs and lessons I share in this audiobook. I'm super excited that it's finally live. You can check it out at 7rulesaudio.com, and it lays out all of these rules in detail so you can build a life that you're proud of, one that you're inspired by, one that allows you massive fulfillment, true freedom, and some generational wealth for your family without sacrificing your most important values. And I'm humbled, and it's still surreal to me that the book has actually been endorsed by Forbes, Entrepreneur Magazine, Patrick Bet-David, which is someone I look up to, Grant Cardone. And my mom got me the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad when I was 18, 19 years old. And he actually gave me a quote for my book. I've interviewed him 3 times. And it's pretty amazing. So I'm humbled, but I do believe this is my most important work to date. And I feel like I hacked the system. I took a lot of trial and error. I invested over $350,000 into myself. I continuously failed, but through that, I created a blueprint to truly live free while growing a wildly successful business. And I want to give you that blueprint. I'm going to continue spreading the strategies and what I learn and everything I feel like can help through this podcast, but also through other ways like this book and audio as well. So thank you guys. I'm super excited for the next episode. Let me know what you think. If you could leave a review, it'd be greatly appreciated. It would mean the world to me if you could check it out on Audible. Thank you so much, and we'll see you on the next episode.